Very good morning, students. So, in the last class, we focused regarding this glycogenolysis and glycogenesis regulation. So, last bit which was left for this particular aspect, that is allosteric regulation of glycogen synthesis and degradation. So, you can see here I have told you in the last class with respect to other covalent modification regulation and inhibitor with respect to that. So you can see in case of allosteric regulation, in case which is involved in both glycogen synthesis and degradation. So you can see here in case of the liver and as well as in case of the muscle, which are the allosteric regulators which are going to act on this particular enzymes which are involved in the synthesis and degradation. So as you all know that glycogen which is degrading to give rise to glucose 1 phosphate, right? That is the glycogen degradation. So this glucose 1 phosphate was acting as a precursor molecule for the synthesis of glycogen that was catalyzed by the enzyme glycogen synthase. So you can see here glucose 6 phosphate and as well as ATP molecules, those are going to act as a inhibitor for this enzyme, that is glycogen phosphorylase enzyme, whereas this glucose molecule is going to act as a particularly inhibitor for this enzyme, that is glycogen phosphorylase. Whereas you can make out in case of synthesis where the glycogen synthase enzyme is involved here for the synthesis of glycogen. In case of the liver, you can see here glucose 6 phosphate is going to act as an activator molecule for the activation of this enzyme. Then thereby you can see the synthesis of glycogen by involvement of glucose 1 phosphate, and the enzyme for this particular synthesis is glycogen synthase, right? So the inhibitors you can see here glucose 6 phosphate as well as ATP, those are going to act as an inhibitor of this enzyme glycogen phosphorylase, and thereby it regulates the synthesis of glycogen, thereby it regulates the breakdown of glycogen, so that is glycogen degradation. So in case of muscle, if you come across same thing, that is reverse of this inhibitor which we have seen in case of liver, the same opposite action which can be observed in case of muscle, where the glycogen which is going to be degraded to glucose 1 phosphate by the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase. Glucose 6 phosphate and ATP are going to act as a inhibitor molecule for this enzyme glycogen phosphorylase here, right? So glucose 6 phosphate and ATP, those are going to act as a inhibitor molecule for this enzyme glycogen phosphorylase, whereas this AMP is going to act as an activator molecule for this enzyme glycogen phosphorylase. So thereby the glycogen cannot be degraded if the glucose 6 phosphate and ATP which goes and binds to the allosteric site of this enzyme, right? So whereas AMP, if it is going to activate this enzyme in order to carry out the glycogen degradation. Whereas same thing you can make out in case of synthesis, glycogen synthase enzyme. So where glucose 6 phosphate was going to act as an activator of this enzyme, thereby you can see the synthesis of glycogen in case of muscle, right? So this how the allosteric regulation which is going to takes place in case of liver and muscles. So this completes the glycogen regulation, right? Both synthesis and degradation regulation. So now let us move on to the glycogen storage diseases. So what do you mean by this glycogen storage diseases or glycogen storage disorder? So these are nothing but a group of genetic diseases which are mainly caused by the defects in the enzyme which are mainly required, that is the gene which is responsible for the synthesis of the respective enzyme, that is in case of the glycogen degradation as well as in case of glycogen synthesis. So you can see this as a result they are going to end up either in the formation of the glycogen which has an abnormal structure, or it can also result in the accumulation of the excessive amounts of this normal glycogen in some specific tissues as a result of the impaired degradation, right? So as a result of the impaired degradation, so you can make out the accumulation of this excessive amount of the normal glycogen in case of some tissues, particularly in specific tissues. So the particular enzyme which is involved may be defective in a single tissue such as liver, which is going to end up in hypoglycemia, or in muscle which is going to cause muscle weakness, or the defect may be more generalized, affecting a variety of tissues. So the severity of this glycogen storage diseases, which is going to range from fatal in case of early childhood to a milder conditions, we can see milder disorders that are not a life threatening one. Some of them which will be more prevalent, which we can come across the glycogen storage diseases. Though some of them out of many, some of them are very more prevalent glycogen storage diseases which we can make out. So these glycogen storage diseases can be divided into three main groups, especially one glycogen storage diseases which is going to affect the liver, and another which is affecting the muscle, and those which are generalized. That's what I said. In a variety of tissues you can come across affecting the variety of tissues, that is a generalized one. So the liver glycogenosis, if you come across in case of these storage diseases, glycogen storage disease 1, glycogen storage disease 3, and glycogen storage disease 4, glycogen storage disease 6, and glycogen storage disease 8. So glycogen storage disease 0 also, right? That is a primary one which we can see here. So glycogen storage disease, which is also called as von Gierk's disease. So this is glycogen storage disease 1. This is also called as von Gierk's disease. Please note it down. This is very important disease. They have asked many times in the exam. Von Gierk's disease. So this is mainly caused by the deficiency of the enzyme, that is glucose 6-phosphatase, which is mainly a very important enzyme, and it is going to be transmitted by the autosomal recessive trait, right? So the people with this particular type of glycogen storage disease 1, which are able to store the glucose as a glycogen, but they cannot able to release this glycogen normally. Understanding? So they are going to store, they are able to store this glucose as a glycogen in the form of glycogen, but they cannot able to release this glycogen normally. So with the time, the stores of this glycogen which are going to build up in the liver, which will further resulting in the liver getting liver to swell up, that is called as hepatomegaly. That is also referred as hepatomegaly. So this what you all know, what I have shown here in this slide. So we have already learnt that is glycogen which is undergoing degradation to form glucose 1-phosphate and getting further degraded to glucose 6-phosphate, that is by the Mutase reaction getting converted to glucose 6-phosphate. Then this is the glucose 6-phosphatase enzyme which plays a very important role in the conversion of glucose 6-phosphate to glucose. Understanding? So this enzyme deficiency leads to the particular storage of this particular glycogen as the time proceeds. So this build up in the liver which further results in the hepatomegaly, that is called as hepatomegaly, liver which is going to swell up. That is going to happen in case of von Gierk's disease. If you come for some clinical and biochemical features of this manifestations with respect to this glycogen storage disease or the von Gierk's disease, you can make out the fasting hypoglycemia condition in case of this disease due to the defect in this enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase, where enough amount of free glucose which is not going to be released from the liver, causing hypoglycemia. So there will be no free glucose which is going to be released as such from the liver normally. So that leads to a hypoglycemic condition. There will be a low level of the blood glucose in the patient or the individual which we can observe here, and that is in the morning condition, fasting hypoglycemia, right? Coming for the lactic acidemia also, you can also end up with respect to this lactic acidemia also. So the glucose which is not going to be synthesized from the lactate which is produced in the liver and muscles. So hence this lactate level which is going to increase in the blood, and the pH is going to be lower, which is further resulting in the further results in causing acidosis. So the acidosis is going to happen, that is lactic acidosis we can also call, and in the blood if it is found, then we can call it as lactic acidemia. So this is how which we can see in case of von Gierk's disease clinical symptoms, so that is fasting hypoglycemia and lactic acidemia. What are the symptoms which we can come across here? I have already told you hepatomegaly, enlarged liver, low blood glucose, that is during fasting condition, high level of the lactate, that is the lactic acidemia or acidosis, fats, and also uric acid can be observed in the blood. High level of the uric acid can be observed in the blood, and impaired growth is going to happen, and delayed puberty. So there will be no that is as such what we can observe, there will be a very less growth, impaired growth, and delayed puberty is going to happen. So what is the treatment for this disease? So initially we can see the glucose via a nasogastric tube. We can give the treatment, and as the children get older, so initially we can do this treatment, but as the children gets older, so glucose is going to be replaced with the cornstarch, which we can take it orally. So the cornstarch which we can take it orally as the children grows up. So initially they cannot do that, so we can provide this glucose via the nasogastric tube. So this how we can treat this particular patient or the individual who is going to have this particular glycogen storage disease 1, that is von Giertz disease, that is going to happen. So if you come for this particular I've already said about this symptom. So coming for the glycogen storage disease 4, so that is called Anderson's disease. Glycogen storage disease 4 is Anderson's disease, and glycogen storage 6 is Hertz disease. This is also called as where you are going to come across all this kind, and glycogen storage disease 0, that is glycogen synthase deficiency. Because of that you can come across. So we can see at last all the particular disease which you can see in the tabular column I have shown you. So first we will see this glycogen storage disease, that is 4, that is Anderson's disease, right? So what is going to happen here? The glycogen storage disease 4 is mainly caused by the deficiency of this enzyme, glycogen branching enzyme. So we have come across this glycogen branching enzyme in the synthesis of glycogen, right? Synthesis of glycogen, we have seen this glycogen branching enzyme. So here what is going to happen? The normal structure of this glycogen, which is going to be formed mainly by the branch, that is by the branching, with the help of this branching enzyme, we have already understood that we have created the branch, that is with alpha 1 6, and which is linked further with a few residues of the glucose by having alpha 1 4 linkage, right? So that particular normal structure of this glycogen which is going to be formed by the branches, but the absence of this glycogen branching enzyme which leads to the formation of the glycogen with fewer branch points and longer outer chains which we can see than the normal one. So what we are going to see, the normal structure we cannot be observed because of this glycogen branching enzyme deficiency. So abnormal structure of the glycogen which is going to be formed, and glycogen branching enzyme is because of this absence of this glycogen branching enzyme, we can make out only the abnormal structure of the glycogen which is going to be formed. There will be no normal structure of the glycogen as such we have observed in the synthesis of the glycogen. As you see, the creation of the branch 1,6 alpha linkage, alpha 1,6 linkage, and with a further few residues of the glucose which is linked with alpha 1 4 linkage, right? So here we can make out the symptoms which will be observed. There is a growth delay which we can see in case of childhood, enlarged liver, same case, that is hepatomegaly, swollen liver, that is progressive cirrhosis of the liver, which maybe leads to the liver failure further, and this also affects muscle and heart in late onset type of this particular glycogen storage 4 disease. So heart will also get affected. And what could be the treatment for this disease? So no treatment apart from the liver transplantation which can be done for this disease, and this is found to prevent progression of the disease. Most children with this condition, which is who is going to die before 2 years of the age, so we can uh, diagnose this particular disease and we can prevent the progression of the disease, but most of the children with this particular condition, they are going to die before the 2 years of the age. We cannot control that, what it is going to happen with respect to this enlargement of the liver and heart failure. So coming for the next disease, that is glycogen storage disease 6, that is also called as Hertz disease. So this glycogen storage disease 6 is one of the least severe forms of among the all kinds of glycogen storage diseases. So this is going to be caused mainly by the deficiency of this liver phosphorylase enzyme. So phosphorylase enzyme is mainly involved in the degradation of the glycogen to glucose 1 phosphate. So this enzyme, because of this deficiency, so which who is going to result end up with the inability to break down this glycogen to the glucose molecule, and further resulting with the storage of this extra glycogen in the liver. He is going to start to store the extra glycogen in the liver, because because of the deficiency of this enzyme liver phosphorylase, they cannot break, they will lose the capacity to break down this glycogen molecule into glucose 1-phosphate. So glycogen which is going to be stored, extra form of this glycogen which is formed, which keep on storing in the liver. So what can be the symptoms which we can observe in case of glycogen storage disease 6 or the ARDS disease? So hepatomegaly, same thing, and hypoglycemia condition which we can observe here, growth retardation also, hyperlipidemia condition, and so the diagnosis of this particular blood sugar of the patient, which who is indicating the cholesterol also will be more, and liver function test can also be done for this diagnosis of this disease, and treatment which requires frequent feeding to avoid the hypoglycemia condition, of course. So you have to maintain this hypoglycemia condition in order to maintain this blood sugar level in a normal condition. So we have to feed the patient with a glucose, so or else we will end up with a hypoglycemic condition. So that is very dangerous. So what is this hyperlipidemia? It is nothing but a blockade in the gluconeogenesis process. As we have come across the gluconeogenesis process, that is nothing but synthesis of glucose from glucose. What is that? Synthesis of glucose which is going to happen from the pyruvate molecule, right? So that we can see here blockage in the gluconeogenesis, and if the blockage in the gluconeogenesis happens, so hence the more fat is going to be mobilized to meet the energy requirements of the body, of course. So the whatever the fat which is stored, it is going to get metabolized, mobilized to meet the our requirement, energy requirement of the body. So this is going to be increased further. This causes the increased plasma free fatty acids, of course, the breaking down of the fat resulting in the free fatty acids, formation of free fatty acids and glycerol as such. So what is going to happen? In order to meet the requirement of the body, it is getting mobilized, and which further resulting in the increase in the plasma free fatty acids, and as well as ketone bodies. Free fatty acids are mainly acetyl CoA molecule which is involved in the synthesis of the ketone bodies as such, especially which are those three ketone bodies: beta, what is that, beta hydroxybutyrate, acetostate and acetone, right? These are the ketone bodies which are going to be synthesized because of the more amount of the free fatty acids which are going to be uh, released in the liver, right, by the mobilization of the fat. So this is what the condition called as hyperlipidemic condition. And you can also make out hyperuricemia along with this hyperlipidemia in case of this disease, glycogen storage 6, that is a Hertz disease. So what is going to happen here? Glucose 6-phosphate molecule which is going to get accumulated is further getting diverted to HMP pathway. Of course, there the glucose 6-phosphate is acting as a precursor molecule for the synthesis of the many hexoses and even pentoses. So it is getting accumulated and is getting diverted to HMP shunt pathway, further leading to the increased synthesis of ribose phosphates, that is ribose 5-phosphates, of course ribulose 5-phosphates, and all going to be formed in HMP, and also enhances the metabolism of the other purine nucleotides, to which is going to end up in the formation of uric acid. So these purine nucleotides which are involved in the synthesis of uric acid, right? Purine nucleotides where you can come across in the purine and pyrimidine metabolism. In purine like AMP, IMP, or all are going to be formed, right? That is going to end up in the formation of uric acid, and you can make out elevated level of the uric acid in the plasma, which can also be associated with this gouty arthritis. So we are going to end up with the gouty arthritis disease, right, because of the excessive production or the elevated level of the uric acid in the blood, which is going to end up with the gouty arthritis. So coming for this glycogen storage disease, that is with particular deficiency enzyme associated, that is glycogen synthase enzyme deficiency, which is the main enzyme involved in the synthesis of glycogen molecule. As such, we have come across, this is mainly caused because of this enzyme glycogen synthase enzyme deficiency, and the patient who is deficient of this enzyme, who is going to result with a decreased liver glycogen concentration, right? Of course, because there will be no production of the glycogen from the glucose 1-phosphate. So because of this key enzyme deficiency, so he is going to end up with a decreased liver glycogen concentration. So further resulting in the fasting hypoglycemia condition. Of course, there will be no glucose molecule which is going to be observed in case of this particular person in the fasting condition. So he is going to result in a fasting hypoglycemia condition. So you can see the symptoms which includes before breakfast drowsiness, right? Before breakfast drowsiness is going to happen, and tiredness will be there because of the fasting hypoglycemia condition. Looking pale and vomiting also will happen, because you will feel, definitely there will be low blood sugar, resulting in nausea and vomiting. Secondary symptoms which includes quick to tire and muscle cramps will be there. Diagnosis of this blood tests of this patient shows that hypoglycemia condition is likely to be present, and liver function tests can also be done in order to monitor the hepatic failure. And the treatment will be, we can give the cornstarch in order to reduce the overnight hypoglycemia condition. Of course, after the last long fasting overnight, that is after 8 hours of the fasting condition, so definitely there will be very less concentration of the glucose in the blood, so you have to give the treatment cornstarch in order to reduce this overnight fasting of this hypoglycemia condition in case of this patient. So you can make out in this slide, I have already explained you these all disorders. So glycogen to glucose molecule, which is the enzyme alpha 1,4 glucosidase is the main enzyme, so it is involved, you can see here. So the branching enzyme deficiency leads to what? Glycogen synthesis and liver, in case of liver phosphorylase glycogen storage disease 5, uh, which is who is going to end up with the glycogen storage disease 6, sorry, and in case of muscle phosphorylase glycogen storage disease 5, right? So you can also make out here glycogen storage disease 6 and 4, and also debranching enzyme deficiency further leads to what? And glycogen storage disease 9, right? So all these glycogen storage diseases, because of that deficiency, what can happen here I have shown you very clearly in this slide. You can understand by going through. If you could not able to, please give a call or let me know the thing. So coming for this last slide in this, so I have given you one tabular column. It is very easy to remember here. Glycogen storage disease type in the first column, second column enzyme deficiencies, symptoms, and it is very easy to remember for you people. You go through this diagnosis and what will be the treatment. Type 1, type 2, type 4, type 6, and type 5, and you can also make type 0, right? So these are all the type 9. These are all the disorders, glycogen storage disorders with respect to this enzyme deficiencies. You can make out glucose 6 phosphatase, debranching enzyme, branching enzyme, liver phosphorylase, phosphorylase kinase, glycogen, right? So these are all the enzymes which we can make out here. And what could be the symptoms? You can observe hepatomegaly, hypoglycemia condition, growth retardation, hyperlipidemia. In case of hyperuricemia, we have observed tiredness, enlargement of the liver, and swollen, what is that, abdomen, right? And as well as tissue damage, muscle weakness can be seen, and low blood sugar we have seen, and impaired growth, hepatomegaly, right? Growth retardation, as well as um very delayed puberty condition can also be observed in some diseases with respect to this. And what could be the treatment, how they are going to decide diagnose this particular diseases, please go through in this tabular column, that is particular which I have given you chart. It is very easy to remember. So these are all the important glycogen storage diseases. They have asked you many times in the exam. So if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. Thank you.